Built to last, where will the next big companies be created? That's the question that our next panelists are going to answer with a fireside chat between my good friends Ursheet Parikh, a partner at Mayfield, and Raj Judge, a partner at Wilson Sonsini. Please give them both a big round of applause. Sorry. Thank you all. Thank you.
Well, hello, everyone. Great to be here. Looks like it's a great turnout this year, and I think we're excited this morning to talk a little bit about Built to Last and where will the next big companies be created in synthetic bio. And of course, with me is Ursheet Parikh, Senior Partner for the Life Sciences practice at Mayfield, and we're going to jump right in. We're short on time, and so I think we should try to get going here. So, Ursheet, let's talk first about. I want to set the stage. So let's talk about the current environment. We've got valuations that have plummeted. We've got capital access problems. The IPO market is shut down. A lot of negativity, a lot of doom and gloom, if you will, in the synthetic bio market, as well as just the technology market as a whole. And we're not sure where the economy is going. So I wanted to get your thoughts just generally on what you think about the market and kind of where we're going and where things are going to head over the next couple of years. Are we going to be in a doldrum for the next 5 years, or are we going to be coming out of this in another 6 months, or are we going to be sort of stagnating? What's going to happen?
Yeah. So first, good morning, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. I've never been more excited about our space. I know with all the various things that Raj kind of alluded to, it can feel kind of challenging. But I think we are set up for the absolute Cambrian explosion of innovation that is coming from startups, larger private companies. And if the one thing I would say is that we are set for synthetic biology to fundamentally go mainstream and transform all of our lives in the next 5-7 years. What are the things about the current environment that make me feel sort of so excited? So it's, if you remember the first in bio-beta, right, 2009, it's right in the depths of what kind of felt a tough environment, right? And so it's probably easier to kind of draw similarities out to that. But what has changed is the fundamental demand drivers for our industry have changed. They are coming because consumers want better products, and making them with the old sort of industrial revolution technologies isn't just sustainable, but also doesn't necessarily create the best products either. And so you have consumers who want amazing products, and biology as a technology has emerged as the core platform that can kind of go and drive that. So all the advances we have in digitizing biology, engineering biology, where the cost drivers are going. The second thing that has happened is to see an industry like this emerge into a mainstream, you need policies. And I think in the last several years, we've seen an amazing alignment of policies. Some of it got driven by sort of the need to bring back the supply chain. Some of it got driven by things like the Inflation Reduction Act that even brought the biggest greenhouse gas emitters in the oil and gas companies to start wanting to kind of go do things with synthetic biology. But then there's also the big trends that have emerged, like AI. And what AI is doing is if we were to kind of go back and sort of manufacture with biology here in the US, it was not going to be the way bioreactors were done 10, 15, 20 years ago. It's going to be done much more with an AI-powered sort of system at every step of the workflow. This could be in high-throughput screening to find new strains. This could be in automation. This could be in generating new products. I'm just so excited about this domain. And to kind of get over to the other side, I think all of you in the room will clearly be innovating, but you'll also have to be very methodical, very thoughtful about how you really make every dollar count. Because because of where the interest rates are, the cost to rebuild the world with biology has gone up dramatically. Capital is going to be scarce. And so we have to just be able to demonstrate that we can provide returns that are going to beat pretty much any other asset class.
So I love the optimism. Definitely contrarian to the current mood in the economy. So that's wonderful to hear. But we're in a tumultuous time. We've got the China sort of relations. We've got the Russian war that we're dealing with. We've got all sorts of different issues. We've got India sort of growing as another potential location and market. So lots of different contractions and expansions occurring. And I know that that spells opportunity for some and it spells challenges for others. But the whole geopolitical climate and the whole geopolitical situation globally provides us with a lot of different complexities that we've never really had to face before. Tell me what you think about that a little bit, Ursheet. I'd love to hear.
So I think, to me, I'm looking at everything that is happening at a geopolitical level, and it's fundamentally creating new demand drivers for things to happen in the U.S. I touched upon briefly on how you want to be able to kind of go ahead and manufacture close to home. This in biobeta is also feeling and sounding different because we have a lot more conversation about healthcare and applications of synthetic biology in healthcare. But the top trend that I'm seeing right now when I'm talking to a lot of people in big pharma is how can we leverage the Inflation Reduction Act to actually start manufacturing antibodies and other biologics in the U.S. And if somebody's going to go ahead and do that, they are not just going to go and do it with the older technologies. People want to now see how do I kind of use a different manufacturing stack? How do I kind of go ahead and use different workflows? How do I kind of go ahead and set it up to be targeted or customized kind of better out on that end? So be it the desire to sort of go ahead and come together as a globe on addressing climate change, right? Because biology as a technology to build food, materials, and things like that is just much lower carbon intensive. Be it on the policy initiatives on driving carbon sequestration, right? We have been involved in a company that's actually converting methane into fertilizer on the spot at farms. And it's the kind of company that is clearly seeing great demand from anyone that is doing organic sort of farming because organic fertilizers are expensive. This is using methanotropes. But this is also seeing just a huge level of demand from the major oil and gas kind of companies. And then you sort of end up having the elevation of synthetic biology as a core biosecurity kind of initiative. If you look and if you talk to our classified agencies or you look at sort of the government strategy, yes, AI, quantum computing, and synthetic biology are seen as these strategic technologies and platforms out sort of for the future. So by all of these issues, right, like the energy independence and the worries that sort of came because of the Ukraine thing, this has fundamentally sort of created at a core level demand for self-sufficiency and a green economy. And who else is going to make it? It's all of you guys in this room. It's the synthetic biology ecosystem that's going to go ahead and make it. So I'm excited for it.
That's interesting. Very, very, very helpful insights. But let me take a little more controversial probe into that question that we're talking about on geopolitical situations and the Inflation Reduction Act that you talked about. And some say that the biggest benefactors of the Inflation Reduction Act are the largest greenhouse gas emitters as well, and they're getting the benefit of the green dollars. So how does one look at that from a emerging company standpoint or a new company standpoint? How do you take advantage of that? Because it seems like the big guys are really kind of getting a lot of that advantage, and we want to politically we want to obviously support the larger companies as well on the global stage, but we also need to make sure that innovation is still occurring and younger companies are allowed to grow with those dollars.
This is a very real problem, and so if I can kind of give an example to illustrate the point that Raj is asking us about, is if you look at sort of the Inflation Reduction Act, the top recipients actually so far of the funding from the government have actually been in Texas and Georgia. And a disproportionately high number of them are actually the major kind of oil and gas. Because in the Inflation Reduction Act, there is a huge incentive to sort of go ahead and move to a hydrogen-based economy. A lot of what we do in synthetic biology with the green stuff really marries well with sort of the decarbonization that's enabled by kind of electrification. And what you have is, and so there's companies here which are working on sort of doing things with hydrogen, using microorganisms that can sort of go ahead and work things with them, like the example that I just kind of gave. But at the same time, what you now have is, the large oil and gas companies being able to claim that they are able to sort of go ahead and make hydrogen out of natural gas And the resulting CO2, they're just going to go pump into the ground, and hopefully it'll stay away. And oh, by the way, they know how to pump CO2 into the ground because they've been doing that with fracking. So you can see how some of these best intentions can kind of suddenly make the fossil fuel-based economy even harder to beat. And when you are working with the government as a larger company, you just have more resources. All right, you have people who can do government affairs, who can sort of talk about working through policy, things like that. This is where I'll actually give a call out to John. Right, I think John Cummers, who's actually sort of really been the convener here, and he's done quite well in educating and bringing a lot of our community together in sort of having these conversations. But I also do think that as a community, we also sort of need to kind of get more politically active. We need to kind of engage in conversations with policymakers, lawmakers, and then take and share the best practices that we have, so that we don't find that it's the old economy companies that in effect end up leveraging and benefiting from all these demand dollars with greenwashing. This is a problem, but I think, and I don't think we have a magic formula for it, other than all of us have to kind of get engaged, involved, and work through it with each of our local jurisdictions, sort of politicians and senators, while sharing best practices on how, when we do the projects right, if you're doing a new biomanufacturing thing, how do you sort of go ahead and leverage the best of these incentives?
Yep, that's definitely the case, and I think that we'll have to spend a lot more time on this, trying to understand where the complexities can be taken advantage of, if you will, for emerging companies and new technologies, because we don't want this to turn into sort of the part two of the solar energy kind of movement 10 years ago, where there were a lot of government dollars, but ultimately they didn't really benefit the innovation cycle that people wanted it to benefit. So more to be seen on that. The other thing that comes out of the geopolitical state that we're in is that over the past 20 years, we've really enjoyed a free economy where R&D could get done, particularly for companies that are innovating in different geographies, whether it was teams in China working with teams in the US, or teams in Europe working with teams in the US, or for that matter in Russia and India and all of that. And now what we're seeing is this, very nationalistic approach, even by the US, which is sort of something that we haven't seen before, at least in the last 20 years in technology. And so we're having problems with companies developing AI-based synthetic bio or AI-based technologies and exporting that between borders. So we've got a company, for example, that wants to set up an R&D team in China as well as in California, and they're having problems doing that because of the government restrictions around the export of AI algorithms and the like. And so what do you see that, and how do you see that impacting the way companies are going to grow and how they're going to continue to take advantage of talent that's global?
Yeah. I think for large companies, right, be it large conglomerates, large pharma companies, large companies in the industrial space, I think they have the infrastructure and the ability to kind of actually do development in multiple geographies. I think for emerging companies, it's going to become increasingly harder and more expensive if you are operating at the intersection of synthetic biology and machine learning or AI to kind of be in multiple countries or multiple continents without sort of running afoul of many of these rules. So the thing that I'm most excited about, and what kind of helps drive the synthetic biology economy down the cost curve to sort of be at par with the broader mainstream legacy technology economies, is the ability to sort of have AI in all of its various forms, right? It's the old form of like reinforcement learning to the newer forms of generative models that is basically going to help us really run a lot of experiments in parallel, look at the data, synthesize, optimize, right? It takes, what we do in innovation with biology from the old school world of biotech, which was often set up on accidents or like divine inspiration, to a much more sort of engineering optimization sort of based model. But as I said, this is happening, if you talk of the national priority technologies, right? Like quantum computing is far from being real. Yeah, and synthetic biology are here. And I think those cross-border considerations will kind of become factors. Our sense is that, and by the way, we've been involved in companies that have actually been transformed and have been made possible because of AI, right? one of the companies that we engaged in early on was Mammoth Biosciences. And they have become one of the most prolific innovators in the CRISPR system space. And there's actually a session from one of their founders later this afternoon that I'll be moderating. What fundamentally made it possible was their ability to really master sort of high throughput screening with a high level of automation, and then using machine learning to be able to kind of go ahead and identify candidates and then marry that with the vet biology to kind of go do that. Now, that world of AI was much more about how do I use AI to screen, look for stuff. But somebody still had to then figure out what is going to be my next set of things. What do we do, right? Now, you take that with generative AI and large language models, and you can start even taking the other side of the equation and sort of amplifying the speed on that. And that whole loop then becomes very significantly accelerating. So, one of my favorite books from, and it'll kind of give you a sense of the era that I'm from, it's from the 90s, from the founder of Intel, Andy Grove, and it was called Only the Paranoid Survive. And the essence of what he says is that every decade or every 5-7 years, something happens which is such a 10x force that shapes the world. And you may think it's not relevant to you, but it comes very quickly, and it will touch every job, every business, every industry. And I would say that for our industry and just generally for the economy, I think generative AI is actually going to be one of those forces. It doesn't matter what your business is, whether you have nothing to do with AI, whether you're just doing sort of manufacturing of reagents or whether you're providing services. I would definitely encourage sort of taking a step back and sort of tuning in to see what is happening in that world, and then sort of dreaming on how it could potentially impact your business. Because 12, 24 months from now, I personally would be shocked if your jobs have not been touched in some way, shape, or form. And I actually think they will have been touched for the better. I think because inherently it's the kind of technology which is really far from replacing people, but it is actually going to be great for augmenting people to do their jobs sort of better. So if there was one takeaway to take from this session, it's probably that as alien as it has kind of felt and far away and esoteric and behind the scenes, there is a high probability that it can actually be used to transform and accelerate your business and make it much more capital efficient in an era where capital is going to be important.
So there you go. Paranoid survival is what I picked up off of that. I think Winston Churchill even talked about that at one time. Let's talk a little bit about the dovetail between how digitization, software, and AI are impacting synthetic bio and funding, because we haven't talked about funding, and funding is a difficult environment, and it's a difficult thing to do. And traditionally, software companies get to revenue faster, they have less capital intensity, but at the same time, software is starting to get a little bit more commoditized, the barriers to entry have gone down, and now we're seeing this opportunity with AI, particularly in synthetic bio, to create something more driven by software, but at the same time with lots of barriers to entry. So let's talk a little bit about the funding environment there, and what can companies do, particularly synthetic bio companies, to become more attractive, to become mainstream, if you will, for venture funding.
Yeah. So if we look at sort of, Raj alluded to the clean tech kind of era, right? Clean tech 1.0 era, right? And the big returns over there accumulated in the public markets to investors. This included companies like sort of Tesla and Phase. Overall, the private investors did not necessarily end up doing kind of as well. Now, a lot of the public investors who got so excited about those gains have been burnt really badly in the SPAC era boom, where you had a lot of companies, both whether they were, clean tech or built by bio, sort of kind of go public, but then underperform on the stock returns kind of side of the house. So coming out of this, what investors want to fund is companies that they can sort of evaluate and measure and operate. And measure their operations on. And this often for public companies starts with when you are in revenues and when you start showing operating leverage and earnings, profits, and things like that. So this is where I would definitely encourage companies, any private company today, to fundamentally think about how they're spending their dollars and how do they sort of go execute to demonstrate their differentiation, get better pricing, right? If you build amazing products that truly meet customers' needs, you will get better pricing. You will have better margins. That can then help you sort of go ahead. And this is a shout out to my kind of colleague Arvind Gupta, who normally is on stage with me, but had a conflict today. And he talks about how you essentially, when you're building a synthetic biology company, you really think down of how you're going down the cost curve. And in the early years, when you are pretty high up on the cost curve, you have to find niche markets and applications where you are going to get paid a premium. And people can remember Tesla today as this mainstream company that's kind of selling a car which is at a lower price than the average American car, right? Average American car sell at like $42,000, right? Tesla is kind of has a $40,000 car, but it IPO'd on the Roadster. Right? It was able to kind of go at the first billion, and it was a premium product. It was a niche product. So I would say thinking about amazing products, thinking about the unit economics of the products, getting to revenue quickly, and giving investors very tangible operating metrics by which they can measure the progress of your business. And this applies at seed, Series A, B, IPO, and even for public companies. Otherwise, it becomes just easier for investors to stick with the big, large companies in an era where it feels a little dangerous to be investing.
So I've got we're out of time. I'm going to give you one last question. I want a quick rapid fire, answer from it, just because I think a lot of us want to hear. What areas do you see in synthetic bio as the prime areas to be looking at in terms of potential growth and investment and the like? And so love to hear what you think. Is it food? Is it materials, hydrogen, carbon sequestration? CRISPR, we've talked about that. Engineered, bio, where do we think?
All of those and hydrogen, but most specifically, I will kind of highlight things which are set up to be capital efficient biomanufacturing. And that I think, and I think fundamentally AI powered everything in synthetic biology. It will absolutely transform how everything happens. A person can do one experiment or can marshal AI to do 1,000 things for them simultaneously, right? I think that's what every scientist and every engineer, every manager needs to think about.
Wow, fantastic. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ursheet. And I hope you folks had a great time today and learned a little bit of what Ursheet thinks about the market. It's definitely contrarian to what I saw and what I thought, and only the paranoid will survive. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave.